Welcome back to episode 4 of You Are Not Your Diagnosis. Today's episode, we're going to explore the topic of why is wanting someone to fix you preventing you from getting better? Why is it preventing your healing? This is a topic that I don't think a whole lot of people are talking about, but I really think it's very important. And it's something that could be a big obstacle or a big roadblock in your path to healing. And so I really want to spend some time diving deep into what is the pitfalls and the blocks that are created by coming from this belief that we need somebody else to fix us and to heal us. So let me just start with where this kind of topic came to me, and I got really curious and started exploring it. And that was with a client who came to see me in the spring. And she had only seen me for a couple sessions. I think this was her third session when she made this comment to me. And it was a big light bulb moment for me as a practitioner. So as a practitioner, I give clients a little bit of homework, and sometimes that's only like a couple minutes a day. Sometimes it could be up to 10 minutes or some simple lifestyle changes. So we're not talking about huge homework where you're spending hours a day, but there is a little bit of something that a client needs to do for themselves on a regular basis. So she came in at this appointment and she said to me, I am never going to do this homework. Like I just don't have the bandwidth to do it. It's not really a priority. And I would just like to be able to come and see you and lay on your table. And she said, I want you to just I want to lay here and I want you to fix me. And I heard those words come out of her mouth, and it was like this little alarm bell went off in my head, because that's really not what I do. I don't really fix people. I support people in their path to creating the conditions so their body can heal and so that they can create their own healing. It's not really about me fixing someone. It's about me supporting someone in the process. And so when she said those words about, I just want to be fixed, it was like, wait, hold up here. And so upon further reflection, because sometimes when someone says something and the alarm bells go off, but instantly I was like, whoa, that's odd. Like I've not really had people come and say, I don't want to do any homework. I'm never going to do homework. Just, you just do your thing. And I'm not going to play an active role in the process. I went home and I did some reflecting on this. And so I want to share what came out of that reflection with you. And the first thing is that when we want someone else to fix us, like this woman was saying that she wanted me to, quote, fix her, she was giving up power to me as an expert. And I think this is something that's very relevant in terms of the medical profession. We become conditioned to give up our power and our own voice and our expertise and our knowledge to doctors and to other experts. But it can happen anywhere. It can happen with, working with a holistic practitioner, and she was giving up her power to me. And that's really the last thing that I want. I want people to be empowered and to have their own agency and advocacy. So that's one of the first issues that I saw with this, was that she was giving up her power to me. And yet I am not the ultimate be-all, end-all expert for her. And she has expertise and knowledge for her body, just like you have expertise and knowledge about your body. So what I've learned in my own experience of working with doctors and working with practitioners is there's a tendency to discount our own wisdom and our own knowledge of what's going on in our bodies. So how many times have you gone to a doctor and you've described what's going on with you? You've described the symptoms you're experiencing, the challenges that you're experiencing, and had that dismissed by someone, had that dismissed by a doctor. So like a story that comes to mind from my own experience of this was I was seeing a new endocrinologist because I had my thyroid removed. So I have to be on thyroid medication to replace the thyroid hormone that my body doesn't make without a thyroid. And I think my primary doctor had thought my thyroid dose was too high, so she lowered it, and then she had referred me to this endocrinologist because my other one was no longer in network for me. And so I went to see this doctor, and around the time that the medication had got lowered, the dose got lowered, my energy levels started to dip after a couple of weeks. So I started to notice, like, I felt like I needed to take a nap in the afternoon. I was getting really tired and really exhausted. Just after a couple of weeks of this decreased dose, which was about the time my body would have started to adjust to this change. So when I saw this new doctor, and she said, she ran some labs, and she said, well, I still think your thyroid dose is too high. And I said, well, I've been really exhausted for the past, month or 6 weeks. I've been finding myself most days in the afternoon feeling like I really need a nap, and that's not normal for me. I don't usually need to take a nap every day. She said, well, that's just irrelevant. Your numbers are still too high. That it really can't be that. And at that point, I actually never went back and saw that particular endocrinologist because I knew she wasn't going to listen to me, and she was discounting my own body wisdom and my knowledge of what had happened and what I was feeling. But if I had had that experience, 10 or 15 years ago, I probably would have just said, okay, well, she's the doctor, she's the expert. She knows that my thyroid dose is too high. And if she's saying it's not really relevant that I'm reporting extreme fatigue in the case of this, then, who am I to question that? So that's just an example of how, we're very conditioned, and this is not to blame anyone because it's basically the way our system is set up and the way we're kind of indoctrinated in a sense, is that we discount our own knowledge of what we're feeling in our bodies. And we say, well, someone else is the expert. Someone else knows better than I do about what's going on. So, that is one of the things reflected to me when I started thinking about this topic of wanting someone to fix us. It's basically a case of we're giving up power to someone else. We're giving up expertise to someone else when we're saying, I don't want to play an active role in this. I just want you to figure it out with your knowledge. And I'm not going to, trust my own wisdom and my own sense of what's going on and my own intuition. So really, to shift out of this, we need to start to reclaim our power. We need to see that we are our own experts of our own bodies. You are the expert about your body. You know your body better than anybody else because you live in it 24/7. So you may see a doctor and they may know a lot about physiology and have studied that for years, but they don't personally know your body and what it's like to live in your body 24/7. So do not discount that body wisdom that you have and that knowledge of what's going on for you, because ultimately, if you keep discounting that, there's valuable information there, and you can, be led astray. There can be, as in my story that you've heard, if you listen to episode 1, you could be misdiagnosed with something. The doctor can miss something. So it's really important to, in essence, stop putting doctors on a pedestal. Stop thinking that they know better than you. Stop thinking that, your lived experience doesn't have value and that it's not important. If you get a doctor who's just like, oh, well, like that doctor that I shared the story of in my experience, who was like, well, that doesn't really matter. She just discounted completely my experience and said it was irrelevant. So for me, I will never work with a doctor ever again that does that because of my own lived experience of not being listened to for 3 years and being treated for the wrong thing. So I have learned that if somebody doesn't listen to me and wants to say my own lived experience is not valid and they don't want to listen to it, then too bad, because I'm no longer putting a doctor on a pedestal. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. Putting a doctor on a pedestal really is saying that because they wear a white coat, because they have an MD after their name, because they went to medical school, that they know more than you do, that they are an expert. And yes, in a certain way, you could say, you could make an argument that that's true. But again, to come back to this mindset piece, you are the expert of your own body. You are the one that knows when something doesn't feel right. And I've heard so many stories of someone having a sense of something being wrong and off, and then going to the doctor, and they do an exam or they do some labs and they say, oh, it looks like everything's normal. And there's still this lingering feeling of something's not right. And eventually it is discovered that something was not right, because that person knew, like, something is off. And not every test is going to show everything, or sometimes the way that tests are interpreted by doctors can be different. So like in the case of that thyroid story, the thyroid labs, there's a range that's normal, and that normal range encompasses people of all ages. So from teenagers, I'm sure there's probably different sets of values for like actual children, but maybe young adults to old people, like in their 80s and 90s, all have the same range that's quote normal. And it's includes men and women. There's not a separation of that. So she was basing it on what was normal range. Well, normal for who? And had I not questioned that, and then I started actually working with a naturopath and started taking a version of thyroid hormone that includes both the T3 and T4. So both the more active form, T3, which most traditional thyroid medications don't include, and the T4, which your body has to convert into active. Well, my body was having a problem doing that conversion. And once I switched, because I was listening to my own expertise and listening to my own wisdom that something was wrong, I started to feel a lot better. In fact, better even than when I was on the dose that they had decreased, because my body was able to make that conversion. So, to come back to this idea of how we tend to put an expert on a pedestal and think they know better than us, it's time to stop doing that, whether you're doing that with a doctor or any kind of practitioner. I've seen even sometimes clients do that, not even own for themselves the role that they played in their own healing and the process that they have gone through to be an active participant in it. It's like I'm being told, thank you so much for your help. And yes, I did help them, but sometimes there's a tendency to think I did it all. And I really want people to actually know that, no, they played an active role in it. So take away from this, stop putting people on a pedestal and start owning your own expertise. Be your own expert. And then in cases where someone's not listening, it's important to just speak up and say, no, like, I am not going to let you discount what I'm telling you as irrelevant, because I know what's going on, and you're not the one that's going to quote fix me. Like, we're in a partnership here. Even seeing a doctor-patient relationship, as they are your partner in this process. They're not an expert. They're a partner, and they're there to help you. But, if they're not listening to you, if they're discounting what you're saying, then you've got to come back again and make your voice heard and say, this is not what I want. And, as you heard in my story, you can fire a doctor. You can go find a different doctor who will listen, because ultimately you don't want to keep giving up your power to someone else and placing them on a pedestal and seeing them as an expert and wanting them to be the one to fix you. So another thing that came to mind when I was reflecting on this theme of, the idea of wanting someone to fix us, is it implies that we're broken. And yes, I think many people, when you're dealing with something like chronic illness, you might be saying, yeah, I am broken. You might be listening to this and saying, why are you saying you're not? But ultimately, that's a mindset thing. You are a whole person in your own right, whether you're healthy or you're sick, whether you're dealing with chronic illness or you're not. You as a human being are not a broken human being. You may be dealing with certain issues that make you feel that way. You may feel like your health makes you broken, but if you're staying in that mindset of wanting someone to fix you because therefore you are broken, it's again coming back to a mindset that's going to keep you stuck. Because what happens, right, when you tell yourself over and over, I'm broken, I'm broken, I'm broken, you're focusing on the problem. You're not focusing on the possibility. And that will be probably another topic for another day to dive really deep into that, because I think that's a really powerful area to focus on of, problem versus possibility. That's where the magic is. Like if you're only focusing on all of the symptoms and how this is ruining your life, then you're staying stuck where you are in essence. Whereas if you're focusing on the possibility, you're holding space for things to shift. You're holding space for the potential for something to be different. So yes, I think that will probably be an episode that comes up shortly, because it's another really foundational mindset piece that I want to talk really deeply about. But in the context of this conversation we're having here, get out of that mindset of thinking that you're broken and remind yourself, this is the mindset piece that you really need to have. Your body wants to heal. Each and every person's body does not want us to be sick. Your body does not want you to deal with this health issue. It's trying to heal, but it needs some support in that process, because when we're sick, it's not going to just magically flip often back to health. So your body is asking for support, for resources. And ultimately, to go back to the conversation that we had in episode 3, the message may not be being received. Your body is trying to communicate to you through this particular health issue, through this pain, through this diagnosis, through whatever it is. Your body's trying to communicate a message to you. So if you're not getting that message, then you're also probably going to stay in that sick position and not find healing, because you're not getting to the root. So if you want to know more about that and you didn't listen to episode 3, make sure to go back and listen to that episode to talk, so you can learn more about this topic of how your body is using the symptoms and the illness to talk to you and to communicate with you as intelligent communication. So we need to play our own part then in that, of giving our body the resources that it needs to heal, because healing takes support for our body. So it takes looking at, how are we sleeping? What are we eating? Are we drinking enough water? Are we moving our bodies and exercising? What thoughts are we thinking? There's so many ingredients that go into this soup of healing, right? And if we just want to say, well, I'm broken and I want someone to fix me and I'm never going to do anything to help myself in this process, then you're going to stay stuck where you are, because your body's trying to heal, but you're not giving it what it needs. So to shift out of this place of feeling broken, start focusing on what you can do. And I like to emphasize here in this piece of information I'm sharing, don't feel like you have to do everything and make all of the changes all at once, because that is going to be so overwhelming to you. That is going to be really, really challenging if you think that you just need to, like you've never focused on your diet. And then you're going to completely change your diet. You're not currently moving your body or exercising, and you're going to do that. Don't try and overload your system with too many changes at once. Baby steps is better in this particular area, because you're going to be more successful. If you overload yourself and you say, I'm going to do 20 different things this week to completely change my life so that I can heal, I'm willing to bet you that probably all 20 of those things are going to fall by the wayside very quickly. If you pick 1 or 2 little things to do, and then, as you master those 2 things, start adding another and then add another, you're going to have a lot more success. So start examining for yourself, what can I do to support my health and healing? And maybe start reading up on things, maybe start researching different things that you could do. Look at things like an anti-inflammatory diet, and there's lots of great information out there. And, for some of these, you might need someone to help you. Like I always say, with things like changing your diet and going to an anti-inflammatory diet, it can feel really overwhelming. So you might need someone to partner with you in that process to help you make that transition, to figure out, well, I'm used to eating, prepared meals or eating out all the time, or, eating frozen dinners. Like, hopefully none of you listening are at that extreme place, but no judgment if you are. It's not going to be easy to just jump from that to completely changing your diet. So you might need some support, is all I'm saying here. So the third part that I want to talk about this idea of the challenge of wanting someone to fix us and how that could be blocking our healing, is that it puts you in a position where you're not active in the process. So much like I was talking about and how you're giving up your power to the expert. Well, when this client said, I just want to lay here on the table and have you fix me, it was like she was thinking that somehow it was just going to magically completely transform her life to lay there and have me, do the energy work that I do on her. And yes, the work is powerful, but without someone going back into their life and making some changes in terms of, like we were just talking about, lifestyle factors and mindset and things like that, it's like you're just going to keep jumping back into those same conditions that created the problem in the first place. So if you're not willing to take a look at, how am I actively contributing to this? How is the stress in my daily life contributing to the fact that I'm struggling with these issues? How is the fact that I, don't feel like moving, like I spend most of my time lying down because I don't feel well? How is that contributing to me being achy and stiff and uncomfortable in my body? Those are things I can't do for someone. Those are things that, somebody else, an expert, cannot do for you. So you have to start to play an active role in your process, and you have to be willing to say, I'm willing to make some changes here in my life, instead of just thinking somebody else can do it all for you. So coming from a mindset then of, I am the one who's in charge of my health and healing ultimately, because that's really the truth, right? You can have people who are way showers, who are partners, who are guides in the process, but bottom line is that you are your own expert. You're the only person in charge of your own healing journey. You're the one that makes all of the decisions. You're the one that makes the lifestyle changes. So when I was going through my own process of starting to explore alternative healing and alternative medicine, back in late 2005, early 2006, I started to get that, there were things that I needed to do to help myself. I needed to take charge. I had spent a little over a year and a half, just saying, okay, this is what they said I had. They said I have leukemia. Okay, now I'm just taking these medications. I'm going to my doctor's appointments. I'm getting my labs. So I'm like following this little path that's laid out, but I wasn't spending any time at all looking at kind of my own agency and my own advocacy in this process. Like, how could I make some different choices that might help me feel better? So get in that new mindset of you're not having somebody else fix you. You're in charge. You decide who's on your team. You decide who cares for you. You decide what lifestyle choices you want to make. You decide what different things you want to explore and try, because there's so many healing modalities out there. There's so many different approaches to healing, and if you can be curious about it and let it be kind of a process where you think, oh, I got to explore these different things, rather than kind of feeling overwhelmed by it. Again, that's another mindset piece that can be really helpful. But remembering too, when you are active in the process and you have agency and control, that the other thing is you choose who's on your team. So don't be afraid to, fire a doctor who doesn't feel like he's listening to you, to ask for a second opinion, to, if you feel like you're not resonating with somebody, if you're trying a modality and it doesn't feel like you've gotten anywhere after a number of months, then maybe it is time to, choose something different, and you get to choose. And don't let that, again, become overwhelming, because sometimes that's what I tend to see with people as well, is we get overloaded with, there's too many choices. I don't know what to do. I'm, kind of just let it be kind of think of it as a choose your own adventure, and be curious about it. And remember that if one thing doesn't work, that doesn't mean that there's nothing that's going to work, because that's the other thing that really saddens me, is many people, we start to give up hope. And I totally get that. I don't want to discount that in any way, because it's so easy, if you have tried a lot of different things, to start to lose hope. I've seen it, and I have experienced it to some degree, but I've witnessed it more than anything in many people that come to me, is that they felt like they've tried so many different things. They've just tried and tried and tried, and nothing seems to be leading to the result. So having curiosity too in the process, and saying, okay, like, those things didn't work, but I'm still going to hold hope that there's something out there that can help me. And then the final piece I really want to talk about, that this idea of wanting someone to fix us feeds into, is really victim mentality. And victim mentality is definitely a big topic. So again, it might be something we talk about even more in depth in another episode. But in the case of this, if you are saying you want someone to fix you, and you're seeing yourself like a victim, that is big alarm bells for me. If you're seeing yourself as a victim, you need to take a step back. It's easy to get there. I certainly, when I first heard those words, leukemia, in 2004, and for months afterwards, I totally was there. So I totally get it. And I'm not saying that that's not in some sense valid. If you're dealing with something that feels overwhelming and life-changing, it's easy to slip into that place of feeling like a victim. But, when you are seeing yourself as a victim, again, it's a huge mindset piece, huge. If you're walking around saying, I am a victim to my circumstances, and a victim to life, and a victim to bad doctors, you're, again, coming back to the point I've been making, like beating a dead horse a little bit here. So sorry if it feels like that. You're, again, giving up your agency to others, because you're saying, I'm stuck and I don't have any power or agency to choose differently. And you do have the power to say, I don't want to see this doctor anymore. I don't want to do this treatment. I don't want to work with this person. I choose otherwise. I choose other things for myself. So really, realizing when we see ourselves as a victim, we think things just happen to us, right? That's kind of one of the root things that is there when we see ourselves as a victim. Life just happens to us. I just got sick, it happened to me, is kind of the energy and the thought process there. But ultimately, there were choices in the path that led you here. And again, I always want to come from saying that's not to blame anyone, because there is a school of thought out there that can make you feel like, if you're familiar with law of attraction, it's like you manifested this illness and, bad on you. Like that, I think that's a misinterpretation of something that's a philosophy that can be a very positive thing, but it can get misinterpreted in that way. So I don't want you to blame yourself in that way, but there's also a need to look at, what role did I play in getting to this point? For many people, it's like we ignored some of the warning signs early, and we kept saying, I don't have time to deal with this. It's not important right now. I don't have the money. Like all of the things that we say when we start maybe to have some initial warning symptoms, and we kind of write it off and say, I'll deal with it later. I'm too busy. That contributes to the process. So looking at that, looking at the lifestyle factors. If you've, lived a lifestyle where you've never really paid attention to what you eat, and you've never really exercised, those are lifestyle factors that can contribute to our genes are being expressed, how programs in our genes for illness can be activated. So, if you've made those choices, it's contributed. So you're not a complete victim to these circumstances. But the good news is too, that I want to say, even if you've made those choices in the past, like making some new choices now can change things, because that is the cool thing about how most disease is actually not caused by the actual genes, like by our DNA. Like research is saying that it's only like 3 to 5%. I think it may be even as little as 1% is actually genetic. And most of the rest of what causes illness in our body is things like stress, trauma, toxin exposures, lifestyle factors, diet, how we sleep, how we exercise. All of those things are key factors that determine if we stay healthy or we get sick. So if you've made those choices in the past that didn't support staying healthy, and you wrote things off and said, I'll deal with that later, you can still now have choice and agency. And by making some of those choices now, even if you did nothing else, even if you just started looking at some of those key factors, like how can I feel less stress? How can I change my diet? How can I sleep better? How can I move my body? How can I reduce the amount of toxins that I'm putting into my system now? Those things could start to make a difference. And then with more support and more ways to address kind of the impacts of those things, which is like some of the work that I do with clients, you can actually wind back the clock on some of those things. So things that got activated by those things can actually be reversed in a way that when we thought that, all disease was caused by our genes, then, we felt like, well, it's just in my genes. So get out of that mindset. If you haven't started to, that's an old paradigm to think, it's just bad genes. So if you've ever said, I'm sick because, this ran in my family, I have bad genes, like start to change that mindset for sure, because most stuff isn't destined by your genes. And even if you have something like, for women, the BRCA gene that can contribute to cancer, breast cancer, it doesn't have to get activated in the body. Just because that program is there doesn't mean the switch for it is on. And the choices that we make in our life can contribute to keeping that off. So shift out of being a victim. And I would say, at the end of this episode, spend a little bit of time just maybe journaling and reflecting on, do you see yourself as a victim? And, examine that for yourself, start to explore that, and start to explore, also the other area you can spend a little time looking at with mindset is just, how much agency am I wanting to give up to somebody else? Am I seeing my own healing as an inside job that I really have to play an active role in? And those two pieces, I think, would be just huge if you just started to spend a little bit of time reflecting on and start thinking about how can you shift your mindset around that. And again, if you get really stuck with those mindset pieces, then sometimes it's important to find help and resources, like working with someone like me, or, there's so many different ways to approach mindset work out there with a coach, with EFT. Like there's so many different ways that you can start to shift your mindset. So if it feels like those things you're exploring them and you're journaling on them and you're really, really stuck with where you are, then perhaps finding someone to support you in that process. So to sum up today's episode, just start to look at, how are you expecting someone else to fix you, to heal you? How are you seeing yourself as broken? And how can you shift that to start to realize that, you are the captain of your own ship, essentially. You are the one that's in charge of your healing, and that healing is an inside job. You can have support, and that's often very necessary and crucial. But when you work with people, are you trying to offload all responsibility for that process onto someone else? Or are you willing to play an active role in your own healing? Because that's truly what it takes for healing. The people that have that sense of I am kind of the key ingredient here and I have to play an active role, that's the clients who I see the biggest success with, is those who realize that. And people who just kind of want somebody else to do it for them and fix them, it's a lot harder. You may see some healing and some shifts, but you're not ultimately going to get to the end path that you really want to. So thank you for taking the time to listen to today's episode. I hope that there were some valuable insights for you in terms of mindset and the sneaky way, because it can be very sneaky, that we can start to want somebody else to fix us, that we can see ourselves as broken, and that we can give up our own expertise and advocacy and agency in this process to others. All right, until next time, I'm wishing you health and healing.